Good afternoon, good morning, good evening, good whatever, wherever you are. My name is Cromulent George, and I'm back here on This is a Revolution, a podcast dedicated to Revolution Pro Wrestling. With me, as always, is the wonderful man, the Patron Saint of RevPro. Never going to live that one down. Dave the Mark, how you doing, mate?
Yeah, I'm very good, thank you, mate. Very much enjoying the post-show kind of buzz and pre-show build for everything that's RevPro from last week and this week. I always feel like the middle of the week's like you're like in that peak moment between you're still excited from what you've just seen and then you've got to build anticipation and excitement for what you're about to see. So all the match graphics that are popping up this week for Saturday and Sunday are giving me that kind of regular little serotonin boost.
Absolutely, yeah, because we're in that real period, like you said, where we've had a show just happened, we've got another one coming up Saturday, we've got Sunday as well. So you're seeing match graphics just pop up left, right, and centre, and it's going to be a good time. I'm really looking forward to this weekend, and again, really looking forward to this chat, mate. So, speaking of which,
sorry, but I was just going to say the feedback from last week was really, really positive. It was really, really nice to saw some people at the weekend that came to speak to me and say that they really enjoyed it, and people that have sent stuff to us online just kind of being positive. It's nice. It gives us that extra little bit of encouragement to keep forward and march ahead.
Oh, doesn't it just, my friend? And you know what is amazing hearing you say that, because again, this phrase you'll hear a lot from me probably, guys, is peek behind the curtain. But when I say peek behind the curtain, it's what Dave and I are WhatsApping each other. And we were talking about what do we think is going to be the good number here. And I'm under no illusions that I'm not expecting people to really care. Right? I'm doing this because I like to have fun, want to talk RevPro. And if we get some people who can get enthused about it along the way, amazing. But I'm a nobody, at the end of the day. And I thought, if I get 5 views on this, I was going to be happy. And we had what we thought was going to be our target of what we'd be happy with for now and what our next goal would be and where we'd want to reach. Dave, we hit a grand total of 80 viewers on this last episode that launched on Friday night. How does that make you feel, mate?
Mate, I'll 100% take that, because so again, peeking behind the curtain, I people that I talk to that I'm friends with who aren't wrestling fans, they're always like, when I say I do a bit of personal promotion for a wrestling company, and they're like, well, what's that then? And I'll be like, well, I do previews and reviews of their shows. I go to the shows, I take photos and send them to the wrestlers. Sometimes I do podcasts about it and stuff like that. So I've got my own website about it, and I'll be like, oh, okay, let's see the website. And I'll send them a link to the website, and they're like, do you do all this? I'm like, yeah. I'm like, well, how long does that take? I was like, a couple of hours a day. I'm like, well, how much money are you making off of that then? Nothing. That's not really the purpose. It's a place to store my hobby. It's like my passion project. I love talking about wrestling, and I don't have anyone to talk to about wrestling. So here we are. And they're like, what? So you just do it for free? Well, yeah, because it's not about making money. It's about doing something that I enjoy doing. I like writing. I like talking. I like watching wrestling. I like talking about wrestling. I like writing about wrestling. And they just don't get it. And then it's only when I break it down, I say, right, how many people do you know that like wrestling? And they're like, well, you. I'm like, right, well, there you go. that immediately, that tells you we're talking about a small audience. Now, talk about the wider world. How many people, what percentage of people watch wrestling as their weekly intake in comparison to, say, football? Then take that amount of people and take out all the people that watch WWE, but nothing else. Then look at the fact that we're not even talking about American wrestling, we're talking about British wrestling, and the circle's getting smaller all the time. And then you say, right, and now we're just talking about the wrestling company that runs close to where I live. Yes, it is, I think, the biggest British professional wrestling company, but it is still, in terms of millions of people that watch wrestling in the world, maybe 1 billion people in the world watch wrestling at some point in a year, but millions that watch it on the regular. And then you're talking about, well, how many people are we talking about who routinely and regularly watch Revolution Pro Wrestling, you're talking about a couple of thousand people, I'd imagine. The Copper Box was the biggest show they've ever done. They had 4,000 people there. In St Neots on Sunday, I would say there was probably between 100 and 150 people there. Maybe a couple more. But certainly, I mean, I don't think it was 200 people. And so you're then saying, okay, so of 150 people, half of them listened to our podcast this week. Like, that's amazing. Like, I'm sure it wasn't half of those 150 people. I'm sure it was all sorts of people. But I do know it was certainly a few of those people because they came up and talked to me about it. And I absolutely love that. And it's just, it's, like I say, it's that pat on the back and it's telling us to keep going with something, because I think that there's so much out there for the other wrestling promotions, and George and I aren't doing this because we saw a gap in the market that we're trying to exploit and make money from and get views and all that kind of stuff. We just love RevPro. That's how we met. That's how we bonded. It's how loads of us met. Like, there's loads of people in like the RevPro like family that we've just met by going to the same shows, queuing up with the same people, chatting to the same people, and I've made some of the best friends I've got in the world out of it. So to be able to talk about it regularly, and whether there's one person listening or whether there's a million people listening, I'll keep doing it. It makes me think of The Big Bang Theory and Sheldon Cooper with his Fun with Flags YouTube channel and his one fan. I'd be happy with one fan. So the fact that we've got more than one fan makes me happy. Now we'll see how many of them come back for the second episode with Kid. If we go from 75 or 80 down to 1, then, maybe not so good. But if we can get the same again, I'll be delighted.
So, I mean, I'm going to pretend I know what you mean by the Big Bang Theory reference there, because not a show I watch. So, yeah, cool. We're going to go with that. Secondly, guys, Dave talked about us not being in this for the money. Don't know what he's on about. Why else am I here? No. Look, I know that Andy Quilden, he's holding out, but one day he's going to be paying us the big bucks to do this, I'm sure. But no, Dave, you're 100% right, mate. We're here because of the love of it, and the thing that's always kept me from doing stuff like this is because I have more fun when I'm talking to other people. And that's what it's done for me this week. Like you said, people have come up to you, spoken to you about it. People have dropped me messages. I've actually put out there, if anyone with questions, and we're going to be answering some later, but people have come back to us with questions, and it's amazing to me. And you were talking about like fan bases worldwide and all of that sort of stuff, Dave. I'm going to tell you something now, mate. We have had podcast downloads, right? South of France, England, Scotland, Wales, all the way over to Saskatchewan, Canada. We are going worldwide in our first episode. So not only can you check out this YouTube video, which thank you if you're watching via YouTube, but also you can catch out the audio podcast, which you'll probably just realize is what we're doing on YouTube, and we just put it into a podcast format. But we want to make sure we capture as many people as possible in all the different ways you might take things on board. So a genuine thank you to everyone that has kind of interacted with us in all of the different ways over the last week. It is not taken for granted whatsoever, and just makes me want to do this even more.
100% with you, my friend.
Excellent. So what we're going to cover today, mate, we are going to do a review and just cover some of the key points from St Neots. We're going to also look ahead to the end of the week, so Raw deal, and maybe a little look at Sheffield as well. We're also going to go with some of the questions that came to us. So the people are asking us questions, we are going to answer them. And just to give a little hint on that, there was a little bit of a controversial David Francisco related question, which we will address a little bit later in this pod. But before we get into kind of the light-hearted stuff, it would be remiss of me not to mention the sad news of James Castle and his passing. I didn't really know much about James as a performer with RevPro a bit before my time, and I haven't quite got to that stage where I've gone back in the archives and watched a lot. I know that I did see him live once before, but I don't really remember a lot about his career or know a lot about his career. But the thing that I know him more for is being a personality in himself on Twitter, and knowing what the guy was going through, the warrior kind of vibe that he gave about himself. Seemed like a nice, funny guy, genuine guy. As a fellow Man United supporter as well, I always appreciate the tweets he was putting out. Just seemed like a wonderful person, taken far too soon. And again, another occasion where the guys have had to get in the ring and do something that no one should have to do. So I'm going to throw over to Dave in a minute, because what we don't want to do is I don't want any of this seem like a plug, but please do go to davethemark.com for no reason other than Dave has done a superb job at giving a top 10 list of James's matches. And all the only reason I want to say that is so that people can go and experience these and hopefully appreciate the man now, if they didn't have the chance to before. The guys in RevPro have also put out a GoFundMe link. If you are able to contribute anything whatsoever, please do so. If you can't, please just share this as far around as you can. Like, share it with everyone. Ask your networks to share it. Anything that can be brought in and raised for Zoe and the family would go on amazingly well, I'm sure.
Yeah, I think it's really, really important to say that when I wrote my 10 recommended James Castle matches, I was really apprehensive about doing it, because I really didn't want to come across as somebody that was trying to profit, and I'm not even sure how anybody can think in what way I'm profiting from it, given how small a reach I have, but profiting in any way, even if it's just in clout of such a tragedy. And I wasn't actually going to do it until I saw something that Charles Samuels posted, and it really touched me, because he said that he just wished more people had got to see his matches, and it made me realise that I am really lucky, because I have taken the time, and it's a bit of my kind of completionist kind of historian perspective on things, that I like when I get into something, I really want to get into it, and I want to know the whole history of it. I want to know every detail of it. So I've gone back and watched every match from RevPro on Demand ever. It meant I got to see loads of James Castle matches, and I really fell in love with the guy. And he was one of the first wrestlers I bonded with online, because I put some things up from his matches a couple of years ago, and he was always so supportive of it. And I didn't know him then. I mean, I never got to know him personally, but I didn't know then that he was ill, and he would have been ill then, because it was in that period. And he was always just such a positive guy, even when going through such traumatic times. A completely underrated wrestler, and someone that those of you that watched the stream on Sunday or were there live will have heard what Andy Quilden had to say. And he really is he was somebody that was built in RevPro from the ground up, from the first ever kind of Portsmouth School of Wrestling classes to working all of the shows, not just sort of from York Hall down to the Broxbourne shows and all these little places that they don't run anymore. He was one half of the tag team champions with Charles Samuels in this unbelievable run. It's such a lovely story between James and Char, and it is one of my favourite stories I've ever told. And then also just fast forward to when he did get to a stage where wrestling wasn't something that he was going to be able to continue to do. He was still such a part of the fabric, because there he is in all of the empty arena shows, providing either commentary or doing the introductions with Andy, and he's just always been a part of it. And it's just anything that we can do to get people watching his matches. Go on to Zoe Lucas's merch site and buy some of James's merch, and keep the name James Castle alive, and keep getting people talking about it and watching him, because the guy deserves to have a legacy, and that's something that I'm sure RevPro will be looking to keep alive. And it's just absolutely crippling, the fact that it's 6 months after we lost somebody else from the RevPro family, and to be sitting back in St Neots Priory Centre doing another 10 bell salute was really, really hard for everybody, but nowhere near can we understand how hard it was for those people that were there who knew him personally. I couldn't watch the people in RevPro that I cared the most about, who knew him the most. I couldn't look at their reactions, because I'm sitting there with my little girls, and I'm trying to make sure that they're okay. And like seeing like Gideon and Josh James be that emotional was just really really hard. But hats off to them for doing it. It had to be done, and they then did the absolute most professional show. There was no air of negativity, sadness, anything like that. From the moment the first bell rang, it was a RevPro show, and hopefully now we are in a position where everybody will be celebrating James Castle in every way possible, and not forgetting him. But the revolution will roll on.
Absolutely, mate. You've just hit everything nail on the head and said it perfectly. Can't say any better than that. So, guys, again, if you can do anything, like Dave says, gone to Zoe's website and buy some merch of James, keep his name alive, fund a GoFundMe, if you can, share that wide. And look, even after all of that, if you just want to go and do something else, I'd really suggest going onto Twitter and looking just through all of the posts that Andy and Gideon especially, like just sharing their memories and supporting it however way we can. But James Castle, rest in power. So, Dave, you were there live in St Neots watching the show. I was sitting at home watching along. So, two different perspectives of how the show went, I'm sure, and kind of the feeling about it. But it was so close to Raw Deal and was kind of looking to how we're going to progress going forward, because I think we coming into Raw Deal, 4 matches on the card, 4 great matches announced for the card as well, but wanted to see how do we move forward with this. And also we had the really big storyline of I don't know what to call them, but this stable of these women who are just coming in and taking over RevPro, and that was the closing sort of scenes that we saw. Alex Windsor and Anita Vaughan had their match, and then we had everyone kind of come out and start attacking. Dave, how did that feel, and how was that going down in St Neots?
It was a really hot end to the show. It's one where the Alex Windsor Anita Vaughan match was really good. It was a really good showcase for Anita Vaughan. I don't think it was a RevPro main event, if I'm honest. But I understand why it was booked to be. When you look at it from a logistical point of view, I think not only did they want to have this closing angle, but I think they also wanted to have the what is Alex going to do? And they can only do that if she's in the ring when the angle hits. I was thinking about this before, because the Nina Samuels Kanji match was my favourite match on the card. And it got really deserved "This is awesome" chants. I don't think I've ever heard that in St Neots before. Somebody might correct me in the comments if I'm wrong, but I can't recall that, at least in the like 2-3 years I've been going to St Neots. And that felt like a really like stellar main event that would have been. But I also get that means it would have been Kanji in the ring, and it would have been Alex coming out to make the save, and then we don't get the will she, won't she thought process. So I completely understand where they've come from with it. And I do think that one of the reasons why, it was so hot instantly at Priory Centre, I really must put that over, and I think that affected the crowd a little bit by the 8th match, and the show went longer than St Neots shows normally do. So there was a little bit of an overrun with it. And it's not to take anything away from the work Alex and Anita did. It was a really, really good match. Like if it was anywhere else on the card, we wouldn't be talking about it. It's only because it was in the main event, and we've come to have this extra high level of expectation from RevPro main events. However, the closing angle was really, really good. Everybody looked excellent in it. There was a moment when it was quite interesting. They did so when they attacked in the 229, they stretched Francesca across the mat, and Nightshade did the big diving splash on her. and it looked like they were doing the same to Anita Thorne, and that it was going to be Sapphire Reed coming off the top rope. And I must admit, my first thought was they've gone from the biggest, most powerful woman in the group to the smallest and least physically powerful woman in the group to do this big splash. Not sure this is going to work. And then I was completely thrown off because they didn't do a big splash. They lifted Anita off the ground. So she was kind of like in like a pendulum sort of swing. And then Sapphire did a diving foot stomp, and it just looked beautiful. It was really like killer stuff. Everybody in that group looked excellent coming out of it. I want to touch on the fact that we don't have a name for them, and I feel like we need one now. I don't know if that's just a personal thing, because obviously I write a lot about RevPro, and I keep finding myself going to want to put a name in there, and I end up just saying the group of, the stable of, the faction of, and then listing the 5 names. Feels like we need something there now, just for the ease of the graphics and things like that, and just to, you know, something that's marketable and something that is memorable. I don't know what that is, but I trust in the process that they will deliver something for us there. And yeah, the Alex leaving them and returning, I think worked really well, because I'm not sure how many people thought Alex would return. It was only when Kanji was getting really decimated that you thought someone's going to have to make the save. But there was then an element of maybe it's going to be someone from, you know, who hasn't been on the card that's going to come out and make the save. But no, Alex is, and it very much now feels like we've got some clear direction. I think Alex is going to front the home side of what is potentially going to be a 5-on-5 rivalry. Alex and Kanji have got a storied rivalry. They've always shown tremendous respect for each other. That was tested a little bit at the British J Cup last year, when Alex was very much in a heel run and Kanji was the hometown like hero, kind of in a adopted hometown of Stevenage. So, but there's enough there to suggest that those two would align and would fight for the greater good. Danny Luna said in Southampton about her having friends and alluding to a 5-on-5 at the Copper Box. So I'm assuming from this, our 5-on-5 at the Copper Box will be Alex and Kanji with 3 versus the 5. And then it's just, will the 3 be Artemis, Ronnie Knox and Evie Madden like they were this week? Or will it be 3 people who we will see between now and the Copper Box? Obviously, we've got 2 shows this weekend. We've got the 229 next weekend, and then there is Coventry and Southampton until the Copper Box. So we've got 5 shows to go to get there.
Absolutely. And Dave, I want to touch on so much of what you said there, because I would agree with everything you said. And again, not taking away from anything that Alex and Anita did there. I think as well, for me, it was a very strong second half. And we could say it's about RevPro shows, about lots of strong matches across the card anyway, but it really felt like the majority of the really strong matches were in that second half. And I think I would agree that the Kanji and Nina Samuels match was the one that, for me, was probably match of the night. It was fantastic. And those ladies, what really caught my eye with them actually earlier this year, January time, it was a much shorter match, but they had one in progress. And that really opened my eyes to both the way that Kanji has improved. And again, when I use the term improved, I don't want to sound patronizing and saying that they weren't good, because that's not what I'm saying, but just the development you can see that she's gone through. And Nina as well. Actually, Nina is someone who I underestimated in a lot of ways, actually. I'll be completely upfront about that. I saw her more as an entertainer who would try and use character work. And what she's actually done here a lot is used her wrestling ability alongside her character work. And that keeps her really strong. And I just thought they had a great match. But yeah, the whole thing looked really great. As you mentioned, we need a name now, I think, because there is a name floating out there and it's not a good name to be assigned to this group. We don't want that name being assigned to this group. But aside from that, yeah, they're looking great. And Alex coming out and making the save, I thought at first, nope, she's going to stand there, and then she just went, nope, see you later, arms in the air, and I was like, oh, okay. And I was doubting that she was coming back. And out she came, you could hear the sound of the dog collar, or the chains even, and there she was, and it was like, okay, cool. Love how that's become her weapon now as well. Great. But yeah,
The idea that any show that she goes on, she takes her dog collar with her.
Yeah, exactly. She packs a bag up, boots, gear, dog collar.
You never know when you might need it.
Yeah, exactly. And it proved well for her there, mate. It proved well for her. But yeah, and it's going to be good because not only are you going to have this team that's all aligned, you're going to have this team of misfits as well, who they're not all going to be on the same page. And that just adds to it. And yeah, I really want to have a think about what we could get out of this, because I do think that we might get one or two potential curveball kind of names in there that maybe we're not expecting. Now, whether that's people that Danny Luna's friends that she alludes to that might be announced for the match graphic, and that's when we get the names, or whether they come in a little bit sooner, who knows? I don't know. But kind of then from there, you mentioned the friends that they had at that point with Artemis, Madden, and Nox. What did you think of those ladies?
I think that, bearing in mind their match, so their time in total probably came in just under 10 minutes, but that wasn't match. So their actual they were on second on the card, if you didn't see, against Lizzie Evo, Mercedes Blaze, and Sapphire Reed. The match came in at about 3.5 minutes, which doesn't tell the full story because there was a little bit of pre-match and post-match attacks, so they got a little bit more time there as well. And then obviously they came back at the end and they did the closing angle. So I think across like the roughly like 10 minutes that they worked the show, they all did a really, really great job and a really professional job, because this wasn't like the big debuts for those three women to come in and get a load of shine. Like, it was come in and get your butts kicked and look good doing it, and do it in a way where you make everybody else look good, and then hopefully we'll get to see them all again in, you know, singles matches where they get a little bit more out of it. But I also really like the booking, because I remember chatting to a long-time RevPro fan and one of my friends up in Sheffield, Aiden, and talking about the structure of like RevPro shows, and he was making the point that he would like to see a little bit more variety in how the shows are structured, and a little bit more variety in like match lengths. And it's funny that ever since he said that, ever since that last Sheffield show, it feels like there has been quite a lot of change to that. So, you know, whether that's 6 or 7 minutes long, whether that was even on that show that Aiden and I went to with Oscar Loeb and David Francisco, that wasn't a tremendously long match. And then this one was even shorter. I think it is, I can't remember a shorter RevPro match, except for the two, Alex Coughlin had a squash over Lord Gideon Gray at the start of Uprising 2022. And Eddie Dennis had a similar one with Lord Gideon Gray. I'm not entirely sure which one that was. Might have been the 10th anniversary show, the start of the 10th anniversary show, or it might have been Epic Encounter that year. But it was 2022 when Eddie came back from NXT UK. And they were very much sort of like shock matches. Nobody knew it was going to happen. Quick finish, big pop for those guys that we weren't expecting. Whereas this was like a pre-advertised match. So, but I really like it. I feel like it did everything it needed to do, because Sapphire, Mercedes, and Lizzie looked like absolute bitches for it. They absolutely bossed all three of the girls. They were vicious, they were violent, they were spiteful, they were horrible. They were everything they needed to be. And the three baby faces, you just like felt absolute sorry for them. You know, and you think like, you know, St Neots is a very family friendly show. Loads of kids there. I'm sitting there with my two little girls, and they were sitting there like hating the baddies and feeling really sorry for the goodies. Like, that's exactly what it needed to be. So yeah, I think for what the match was supposed to be, it was a really, really well executed one.
Yeah, nice. And I would agree with, again, the point you made there. I thought the amount of time that these ladies had was not a lot, but a professional job done. And I think they all got to do something a bit different as well. And that's what I really liked about this trio, actually. you had Artemis, who kind of come in as the powerhouse of that team. You had Evie Madden, who you could already sense a lot of personality and shine coming out. And I can't remember, I think she did a crossbody and she was kind of coming down to the camera and just gave like a little, like, something like that to kind of already try and start getting personality out there. You had Ronnie, who I thought was absolutely fantastic, and she showed just a lot of going around here, there, and everywhere, hitting lots of different moves and whatnot, and looked like this real dynamo and almost like kind of that cruiserweight kind of style almost. And yeah, I thought they did a fantastic job, and I really want to see more of them in RevPro. So, and what I would like to add as well to that match, the ladies who were on the kind of stable side, they just everything about them as well. They are increasing week on week. They're getting more confident within their role, and that's really coming across in what they're doing. And I know the term is used a lot in wrestling, but the term prodigy is thrown around a lot. That's how I describe Sapphire Reed. Like, everything she was doing on that show is clicking. Like, the first time I saw her, I thought, this girl is going to be good. And then I saw her on, I think it was Portsmouth show. I don't know if that was the first time, but certainly it was against Maya Matthews. And she looked amazing there. Been grown in character. Her match with Danny Luna at High Stakes earlier this year, she's something special, and she just seems to have gone up to another level. Some really stiff, strong kicks, like real sort of like Muay Thai kind of kicks, stomp at the end, and she just has this demeanor, this look that if you meet this lady before a show, comes across as one of the nicest people you've ever met, and then she's out there in front of a crowd and is just does that. Such a great performer, and I want to see her do so well in RevPro, and I think she will. I think she's going to be out of the next crop that hasn't had the opportunity yet. I think she's going to be the next one that you start to see kind of flirting with the US side a bit more.
It's really interesting that you say that. I coming home from work today, I was having a little think about the fact that we didn't get a Queen of the Ring last year, and I know that. So I know that because of the 11th anniversary show being built to the stature that it was, it did change some of the plans for the year, because obviously that was a reaction to All In being announced, and All In wasn't announced until, was it maybe February last year?
Yeah, about that.
So it meant that the tag league was later than normal, and there wasn't a Queen of the Ring. I wonder if there will be a Queen of the Ring this year. I really, really hope that there is. That it was a standard of the RevPro calendar before last year. And I was driving home from work, and I was thinking, I wonder if they did a Queen of the Ring, who would win it? And my first thought was Sapphire Reed.
Absolutely.
I think it would be a great thing for her to hang her hat on, and have that title. And it's something that when the Queen of the Rings have run previously, they've always felt like, I mean, obviously I'm watching them in retrospect, the early ones, and then I watched the 2022 Queen of the Ring on demand, and it felt a little bit standalone. Like, it didn't feel like it was necessarily completely feeding into all of the other shows, because there was a lot of women in there who weren't regularly performing on those shows. Whereas now it feels like there's a real division, and you could have stories going through that tournament and coming out of it, and it just feels like it's like an open goal ready to be scored into, if they've got the the facility to do it across multiple shows, as well as the tag league later on this year. But still a long way to go in 2024, so I'm optimistic we'll get both.
Absolutely, yeah. And one thing I really want to kind of give RevPro their flowers on this year has been the way that the roster this year has kind of felt like you're getting a lot of different people mixing up, a lot of fresh faces, and you still have that core you're used to seeing, but there's a lot more around it now, surrounding it, and that has felt so much more in the women's division than it is probably in any part of RevPro right now. So yeah, loving it, loving what's going on there. So Dave, what else about the St Neots show really grabbed you?
So my standout match besides Kanji and Nina Samuels was Chris Ridgway and Zazoya. I kind of knew it would be ahead of time because this match was like an absolute bit of me. They're the two people to have ever come into. I mean, I know Chris Ridgway isn't coming into RevPro; he's coming back to RevPro. But from my fandom, he's coming into it because I wasn't there
Same.
for his initial runs with RevPro. They're the two to come into RevPro, and for me to just be like, please just keep getting booked every week because you're adding so much to it. I want to see. There's so much from Chris Ridgway. I want to see. I want to see him and Ethan Allen and Luke Jacobs as British Strong Style as a trio. I wish that they hadn't broken up the Connor Mills, Chris Ridgway, or maybe they haven't. Maybe they can rekindle that. It wasn't like an absolute breakup. It was just they worked one week, they fell out the next week. They're explosive characters, but that tag team has potential for legs in it. Chris Ridgway, cruiserweight champion, that would be absolutely brilliant. He could just break people. I think he offers something so much. He offers so much that others don't offer in the sense of variety. He is a cruiserweight size, but not a cruiserweight style. So he complements really well with the other cruiserweight. But also, when you are a smaller wrestler who wrestles the way he does, you can wrestle anybody. So he can have a really convincing match with, Zazia's a big lad. I think he's like 6'3". He's bigger than me. I'm 6'2". And he is their match was very much like Chris Ridgway just beat the shit out of him pretty consistently. But what I loved, and I actually think that Zazoya's victory over Ridgway was more impressive than his victory over Luke Jacobs, because when he beat Luke Jacobs, there was an element of surprise and shock for everybody, but also for him and for Luke Jacobs. Whereas Ridgway was beaten, he was pinned clean in the ring, wasn't getting back up, and Zazoya didn't look like, the cat that got the cream. He looked like somebody who just won a professional wrestling match because he beat an opponent. But he beat him in that way of, you can give you Zazoya, it was almost saying to Ridgway, give me everything you've got. You can keep knocking me down. You can keep kicking me. You can keep doing everything you've got. Won't get a free count out of me. And all I need to do is hit one move on you, and I've got you. And that's exactly what happened. And it wasn't one of those matches where it's like, oh yeah, classic. He takes 90% of the offense and then somehow wins, and they both look really good. That's Zazoya's style all over. He's resilient, and he's got that bounce back ability. He's like a cardio machine. He can endure and then strike because he's explosive, and I loved it. It's one of those matches, the more I think about it, the more I enjoyed it. The more I mull over the details, the more I realised that it was wonderful. I really liked seeing Scotty Rourke. My first time seeing Scotty Rourke, the Portsmouth show last year, was the only show that I didn't get to in the second half of last year because it was my wife's birthday and Sod's Law. It was Jordan Said's debut. It was Scotty Rourke's debut. It was Kelly Six's first match in years for RevPro. And all these things happened on my wife's birthday. So I'm really glad I got to see Scotty. I thought he did a great job. Again, I feel like he offers something that not many people in the scene do, because he's that dirty, grimy cruiserweight. And Will Caven is like a similar, in terms of both cruiserweights, both have got a similar personality in the sense that they're easy to hate spoilers. But I'd say that Scotty wrestles more of a cruiserweight style than Will does.
Yeah.
And so I feel like they complement each other in a division really well. And then when you think about a potential cruiserweight division, as opposed to a champion with rolling in challengers, a division where you've got a Chris Ridgway and a Scotty Rourke and a Will Caven on the hillside, and then you've got your Cameron Kais and your Leon Slaters and your Robbie X's on the face side, and then you've got Jordan Breaks, who with faces offering something completely different. It feels like there's lots to happen there. I'm not saying Scotty's someone that is going to be on every single show, but he's certainly someone that I want to see become part of that wider roster of people that we see come in for a few shows, maybe we don't see him for a few shows, come back in and out, and until opportunities arise. And then Luke Jacobs and Robbie X and Leon Slater and Connor Mills, I think they're both two matches that everybody was like really looking forward to. Obviously, matches we've seen before. We've seen Luke Jacobs and Robbie X compete for the undisputed British Cruiserweight Championship back in what would have been the end of 22, start of 2023. And obviously, Leon beat Connor for that same belt at Uprising last year. Their matches were probably more like, they were both like really entertaining matches, but it's more what happened at the end of those matches, which are like the real talking points.
Yeah.
So Will Caven coming out and causing the distraction finish for Mills to beat Leon is a very interesting story development. Caven and Leon have had a scrap recently in the 229 with Fuego and Robbie X. So there's storyline reason why he would there. I've got my own theory as to where that might go, and I'll come back to that in a moment. And then with Robbie and Luke Jacobs, it was more about at the end, Luke continuing to attack Robbie and putting on the half crab and trying to make a real show to Michael Oku. And it being JJ Gow that came out to make the save, not Zazoya, not Connor Mills, who I thought would be one of those two that would come out because of everything that's happened recently. It's something that I love that RevPro do. We're not forgetting the fact that JJ Gow and Luke Jacobs have history. They obviously don't like each other. We can't forget that. They beat 7 bells of piss out of each other in Crystal Palace in February. Obviously, they don't like each other. And Robbie and JJ were teaming together only a few weeks ago in Sheffield, and are people that have, the idea that someone is someone's friend for a few weeks and then we forget that they were friends for the next 6 months or a year is such like an American wrestling trope. Or maybe that's harsh. Maybe it's just a bad wrestling trope. It doesn't happen here. These are all like 3-dimensional characters. These are all like human beings as well as wrestlers, even in their storylines. And I really like that. It makes me ponder, looking ahead, are we going to get for this week, are we going to get JJ Gow and Robbie X versus the Young Guns? That feels like a match which is absolutely set up for Raw Deal. Alternatively, are we going to get JJ Gow versus Luke Jacobs rematch from High Stakes at Raw Deal in a singles match? I think Stevenage does normally get some big matches. There's a lot of tickets to sell in that venue, so maybe that's one. I think I'd be more. I'm not sure which one I want more. I think Luke Jacobs and JJ Gow would obviously be like a stellar event because they have such great chemistry together. But I think from a storyline perspective, it might be more interesting to do the tag match. Just to see where that goes from it. Obviously, we know Ethan Allen and Connor Mills looks like it's pretty much set for the Copper Box after Mills called Ethan out on Sunday. And then in terms of Will Caven and Leon Slater, it's making me think that we know Neon is wrestling Will Caven on Sunday for the undisputed British Cruiserweight Championship. I think that it's their way of showing us that once Neon and Caven is over, we might get Caven and Leon leading us to Leon and Neon. So I wonder if that's where we're going here. If we get Neon beating Caven on Sunday, Leon Slater then beating Caven at the 229, and then that's setting up Leon Slater versus Neon for the Copper Box. Definitely, nice. It's where the little breadcrumbs seem to be leading me. But again, something that I love about RevPro is they put out a lot of breadcrumbs, and sometimes they lead in the right direction, and sometimes they don't. And that's the beauty of watching a show that's not predictable.
Yeah, absolutely. And guys, in a couple of weeks' time, I think it's about 3 weeks actually, Dave and I are going to be sitting down to discuss what our preview or what our predicted card should say for the copper box is going to be. So have a think yourselves about where you think this is going, because I know that I'll probably go to a bit more fanciful matches. Dave will probably apply the logic a bit more. But in terms of those matches you've just discussed there, yeah, just a great show around. Guys that you know that you're going to get great matches out of. I thought Robbie and Luke had a great match. And again, they're very much known for particular type of styles, and I think they just chucked it in with a bit of chain wrestling in there as well, and some stuff that you don't normally see out of Robbie. It reminded me a lot of that Kushida match, and they got to show their individual highlights of what they can do, but also add a bit extra in there to people that might think you're one style, you're one style. Not going to forget the showdown between RKJ and Zazoya, so that's interesting where that's leading. Which we'll touch upon Raw Deal in a moment, but I think that's where that's going. And yeah, the Mills versus Ethan Allen call out. And guys, we said it before that there's breadcrumbs that get put down. And Saturday morning, I get out of the car and get a text from Dave and say, "This is my match. I think it's happening for Ethan Allen at the Copper Box. Remember this text." And then the next day, a match happens. I'm like, "Oh, I check." I'm like, "No, it's a completely different match." So it's just showing you how they can put those breadcrumbs out there. You can start to think it's going a particular way and doesn't go there, but not in the way that's nonsensical and doesn't make sense, in the way that it's just keeping you on your toes and making sure things aren't predictable. Your points on Ridgeway, amazing. Yep, loved it. And as you were talking about this division that's kind of unfolding before our eyes, you got me thinking about Chris Ridgeway versus Cameron Kai, like down the line for a title. Yeah, that's going to be special. But a wonderful show in St Neots. But this weekend we have Raw Deal, and my first trip to Stevenage to go to an event. Really looking forward to this one. I wanted to see kind of how close this was for me being able to get home, and I'm already doing a trip to the Midlands, so I thought, let's take a pit stop along the way. Let's get to St Neots. Let's go and watch this show. And Dave, what you think about the card that's been announced so far?
Well, my first thought is it's very much not a complete card yet.
Mm-hmm.
So looking forward to see what's added to it. I like what's there. I like the variety of what's there.
Yep.
You've got the big blockbuster main event.
Yep.
Michael Oku versus Anthony Ogogo. Anyone that questions Anthony Ogogo can be immediately just acknowledge the fact that Stevenage is a small town in England, and the fact that when they announced Anthony Ogogo versus Michael Oku, it made all of the local papers, and then the regional papers, and Revolution Pro Wrestling is not being advertised, but in feature-length articles about Anthony Ogogo wrestling in Stevenage. That tells you exactly why the man is where he is. Not to mention the fact that every time he stepped in the RevPro ring, he's really, really delivered, and he's improved time on time again. And if you've been to see any of his matches, where on the smaller stages against David Francisco in the 1865, against Charles Samuels, against Rob X, you can see that he is making these significant gains each time. I think that the two will put on a really, really good main event. I think it will be something that's really, really enjoyable. I think it will captivate the crowd. I've said it time and time again, Michael Oku can have a great match with anybody, literally anybody. And it's fascinating because on one side, Anthony Ogogo could win and become the undisputed heavyweight champion. And realistically, that his name on the Copper Box card is a big deal. So you could look at it and say that actually that's a business perspective, good decision. And maybe that's something they'll look at. On the other hand, you could say, well, Michael Oku had his story, the investment in him. He's not going to lose the belt. He's got to keep going. Okay, fair enough. I'm with you. So is Anthony Ogogo going to lose? Because that's not happened since he lost to Cody. Yep. And you can say, oh, maybe they'll do a DQ finish. Maybe they'll do a count out finish. Maybe they'll do something like this. So, yeah, they can. But if the cage match says Michael Oku defeats Anthony Ogogo, that'll be the first time that Anthony Ogogo has an L next to his name since he lost to Cody.
Yeah, absolutely.
And if it is a DQ or a time limit draw or whatever finish you want, where you feel like it's a clever way out of a difficult situation. Well, that's really un-Rev Pro, right?
Mm,
The
yeah.
only times I can think where they've done a match where it ended like that, it's always been to build a rematch. And I don't think this match gets a rematch. I think this is the one. This is a one and done. And I think Michael Oku wins. I think he wins clean. And I think Anthony Ogogo will put him over. And I think that he'll have Tony Khan's blessing in doing so. And I think that's actually massive for Revolution Pro Wrestling. So yeah, really, really excited for that. How are you feeling for it? It's your first trip to Stevenage, right?
Yeah, I'm really looking forward to that trip because the venue always comes across so nice on TV, and I'm a bit of a sucker for just going to nice venues for things and something that's a bit more different and provides something different for my wrestling. So looking forward to it. And what's really cool is my dad's coming with me. So my dad has only ever been to one wrestling show ever in his life, and I think it was 1990 or 1991. I was 6 or 7, and we had the British Bulldog at our local town hall when he was on his sabbatical away from WWF at the time. Let's call it that. And yeah, it was wonderful. Like kind of being able to get a ticket and know that we're going to share this and do something a bit different. And what you said there actually is huge. He said to me, "Is there any wrestlers I'm going to know?" And I went, "No, there's not going to be. But trust me, this is really good and really different to what you think." And I went, "Wait a minute. You know Anthony Go-Go, don't you?" He went, "Yeah, the boxer." Straight away, there's my dad, who is not someone that keeps up with all of wrestling. Like, he's not one of these people who goes, "Oh, I don't care about it," but doesn't really keep up with it. He knows Anthony Go straight away. And all of those reasons that you said there, I think are perfectly good reasons and make this a bit more of an interesting match and not just this is going to be Michael Oku winning definitely. Like, they're going to build it up. Agogo, I don't think gets enough respect for what he brings. The guy is not the guy who's going to give you your 20-minute classic, right? He's not going to be the ring general that goes out and does that. But he's going to work with a guy that can cover that aspect a bit more because, as you've seen, he is, again, growing into his role and he's got the performance side of it down. But every time you see him actually in the ring, there's little bits, just new things that you notice, and he knows what to lean on, knows what his strengths are. And I think that what he's got and what he's bringing it up in himself with, putting someone like Michael who has got just that capability and doing what he does for so long and all those years, I think they're going to put on a really good match. Not to be underestimated, but I'm agreeing with you. I think that Oku is going to win, but I think by the end of this weekend, we get a really clear direction on what the Copper Box plans are for Anthony Go as well, because I think something's coming out of this. I don't know what, but we always get these kind of matches that are a bit more marquee than others, and I think that is going to be one of the marquee matches at the Copper Box.
That's really interesting. I hadn't actually thought about Anthony Ogogo for the Copper Box.
I hadn't until you mentioned all the points you were mentioning there.
Now it actually feels like a bit of a no-brainer to do it from the AEW RevPro crossover, big name, and also one of the beauties with a Go-Go is the Copper Box is going to be a long show. You talked about it last week. You talked about how with the JJ Gow and Luke Jacobs match, you said maybe you didn't quite. No, sorry, it was Connor Mills and Zack Jr. match, wasn't it? Maybe you didn't quite enjoy it as much in the moment as you anticipated, and when you watched back, you enjoyed it more just because of the longevity of the show. I'm a big fan of a 7-match card, as opposed to an 8-match card or a 9-match card, unless you're going to put something on there that is short and sweet. So this week, in St Neots, we had an 8-match card, but one of the matches went 3.5 minutes. Perfect. An Anthony Ogogo match that doesn't last very long can be a really good spectacle, and it can break up the show quite nicely if he's put in there with someone who would really enjoy watching him knock out.
Yeah.
Which would be an interesting turn, because that would be a babyface Anthony Ogogo sparking out a Will Caven, a Lord Gideon Gray, or a bigger name person from outside of RevPro, or maybe someone with some history in RevPro, or maybe something that ties in with what Tony Khan's plans are for All In. Yeah, who knows?
Yeah.
It'll be interesting. I'm gonna have to think about, does a go get on the card, and if so, where does he fit in with it?
Yeah.
In terms of the rest of the card, we've got 2 women's matches again. So we've got another 8 women on the card, which I'm absolutely loving. The whole women's revolution.
Fantastic.
And then the street fight as well, right? So if we start with the street fight, we've got Oscar Loeb and Charles Samuels versus Golden Boy Santos and David Francisco. I will just say, I've said it a couple of times, so I think I'm plagiarising myself. But if you've not been to the Gordon Craig Theatre, and the Gordon Craig Theatre is perfect for a street fight. There are so many places they can go. From like the logistical layout, you've kind of got the stage, and then you've got like the rampway, you've got the ring, you've got fans sitting on either side, you've got a tiered stand, like on the facing the entrance way. So first of all, they can explore all of the stand. But then to the sides, you've got these little pockets. So in the one far corner, you've got the commentary desk, and they can explore that side. On the other side, you've got the bar, which can definitely be explored. And then around the corner, you've got all the merch. It's a big venue with lots going on, and it's definitely a way where they could definitely get lots of fans' involvement, because they're working around the room a little bit like a little bit like an Anarchy in the Arena type thing that AEW does, where it's a little bit sprawling, it's a little bit all over, and then they can bring it into the ring. And I can't think of better people to do that than David Francisco and Charles Samuels.
Yeah.
In terms of like that charisma they've both got, and the way that they can elicit a reaction from a fan. Like Charles Samuels is like absolutely beloved. Like, how can you not adore the man? And David Francisco is such a prick. Like, I love the fella. Like, he is wonderful. He's the nicest guy in the world, but he is a prick when he's in a wrestling ring. And he can do that so well. I can just imagine him mugging kids off and all sorts. I think that would be real good fun. And yeah, I'm excited to see how they do a stipulation match, which they don't do very often. But I'm hoping and I'm expecting it to be in quite a fun way.
Absolutely. And like you said, there's a lot of stuff that's just been done recently, which is very un-RevPro, but not un-RevPro in the way of like they're just trying to throw things and see what sticks. It feels like it's thought out, it's well planned, and it's going to really result in some good stuff. I think that match is going to see a Francisco and Golden Boy Santos win. I think the work that Francisco is doing at the minute is fantastic, and he is a prick, but he's really getting to show what he can do now from a character perspective. And he's always been over in Southampton, like always, even as a contender. What the guy is doing now, I just want to see him get a punch eventually. Maybe that can be from Anthony Ogogo, but the work he's doing right now.
Well, I love that idea. I absolutely love that idea. You've planted that seed into my head now. I don't think I'll be able to get it out. Anthony Ogogo sparking David Francisco out in the copper box to a huge ovation. Yeah, I like that.
Andy Quilden, we are here for booking ideas. £5, that's all it takes.
Nightshade versus Hayley J. I'll be the first to admit I'm not too familiar with Hayley J. And it's an interesting dynamic, because everything that I saw online for Hayley J was that she was like a very kind of character-based wrestler, and someone who was a bit of kind of, sort of like I don't know how to say it politely, like a bit of a trash girl. That's kind of like her gimmick side of things, which immediately made me think heel. But then surely against Nightshade, she'll be working a face side of that. I can only imagine this is a Nightshade win, which will be interesting, because Hayley's also got a match on Sunday against Alex Windsor. And normally, when someone's coming in for a weekend, they might pick one win up and one loss up. And I don't see a win either way here, because I feel like Nightshade needs to win. I don't want Nightshade losing. We want this group to be formidable.
Yeah,
and I don't think they should be picking up many defeats. What we can absolutely do is have it as a really dirty win. There's no reason why Nightshade can't win, because all of the other many heads on the many-headed monster have got involved. But yeah, I think that's really important, especially after she lost to Danny Luna, which again I think was the right decision. We want to keep the belt on Danny, but what we don't want is one of the, I feel like this group is 5 women who are of an equal standing, and we don't want any one of them picking up many defeats and looking like the weak link. We don't want any suspicion of them breaking, of them having weaknesses or any breakup tensions before it even feels like it's fully established yet.
Yeah, I'm with you there completely, and I'm with you. I think Nightshade wins. Now, I'm not massively familiar with Hayley J, other than the few bits I've seen on the OVW Wrestlers documentary on Netflix, and she's featured quite heavily in that, and I think that's where she gained a lot of her notoriety over this side of the pond. She seems the kind of wrestler that plays and I say plays the character. I don't know how much of this is real life, how much of it is character. They blend that quite nicely on the show, but sort of the trailer park kind of lifestyle, and that's where I really feel real sort of humble kind of lifestyle. And she kind of just blew up in this way. I think as first as a heel that was quite bougie and all of that sort of stuff, and then really the fans just took to her kind of no nonsense kind of attitude. And what's really been interesting to me is I've only seen her announced for a couple of promotions over here so far, but it has been more of what I would say have been the more work rate promotions, which is really interesting, because I thought Progress, not that Progress doesn't do work rate, but they kind of have this work rate style, but they also do a lot of character. So I thought somewhere like that we should be on, or the Slam Master shows that kind of come around the country. But interesting to see how she fits in RevPro. I think this weekend is a double loss for her, because she's got a bit of name recognition, even if people don't know a lot about her. She has got a name cachet that you can utilize a little bit. And I think we have a similar situation that we have with Fuego, where she gets to show off a bit of her, like you said, a cheap win maybe for Nightshade, but she still gets the win. And then you can kind of hoist them up from that, because I think these guys have got to continue getting wins all the way into Copper Box, which leads me on to the final match we need to discuss, is the 3-on-3 women's tag, which contains some of the other members. I think in this one, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think it's Mercedes, Sapphire, and Lizzie Evo that are going to be in this match. And
so it's Nina and Mercedes.
Nina, okay, yeah, brilliant. So yeah, a really strong lineup there against Lucia Lee, Kanji, and Rio. So some great names there. Loving that Rio's get back on the card. Massive fan of Rio. She has just got the kids today want to say aura about wrestlers. She has it. There's just something about her. She is small, but she's big. She's powerful. She's got all of that. Lucia Lee is one of the biggest potential wrestlers we've got on the women's side of things in this country, I think, from what I've seen of her. And then you got Kanji, who's just the best way I can describe. She's got that Ricky Steamboat quality of just getting people to love her. She really does. And going up against these women, I do think here as well, I think it's the stable. I think they pick up the win for me. I think they're going to be kept strong. But I think when you've really got to do things differently here, and where you could potentially do doubling up on your card, is we've got the street fight between the gents. We need to try and do something a bit different here, so that it doesn't really take away and blend into the same thing. But hey, that's a really minor kind of nitpick in advance of I want to see something different here. But again, something great we're going to see on the card.
I think they can do quite a lot of isolation work here. And to be fair, I I really like the idea of them keeping Rio out of the ring for as long as possible and just working Kanji and Lucia Lee, because both those girls are like, they're great baby faces. They've got great facial expressions. They're so emotive in the way that they work, and they really kind of elicit that reaction from the crowd. And Rio, the powerhouse, can just be getting frustrated that she's not getting an in, and then she can get the big hot tag. But I do feel like you're right. I think Lizzie, Nina, and Sapphire need to take the win here. Absolutely, that it won't be in 6-man matches. I think unless you are an established trio and it's a trios competition for a trios division, we don't have that in RevPro. It doesn't matter which side wins, because there's so many ways you can book it where it doesn't make anybody look bad. You mentioned Mercedes. I wonder if we'll see Mercedes. I wonder if we'll get a third women's match. If Alex Windsor's working Sheffield on Sunday, I wonder if she'll work Mercedes Blaze on the Saturday.
Yeah, I think that's a good shout.
In which case we could have a defeat for Mercedes, and it would not be a clean sweep for that stable. But that would be, a loss to Alex Windsor is buying. That doesn't weaken any group.
No, absolutely.
Like the standard, her and Danny Luna are the standard in the women's division, not just in how good they are, but how they've been booked. They've been booked to represent that standard. Alex Windsor's literally been beaten 3 times in RevPro ever. She's beaten by Rio and Danny Luna recently, like over the last year, and before that, not since her debut match against Ginny in 2017. So,
wow, that was something I wasn't aware of.
That's the standard we're talking about.
Yeah, okay, yeah, because I remember when Alex came back, she was a name that I'd heard of, and I saw her at the 1865, and she came out for a match against Giselle Shaw, and that was because I think Giselle was the champion at the time, and Alex won that match, and I was like, whoa, what's going on here? Like, I hadn't been following RevPro all that closely, and yeah, just kind of fell in love with kind of what she was about and the kind of wrestler she is. So, but I didn't realize she was booked that strongly in RevPro. So yeah, interested. I agree. I think that would be a good match to book. It means that you've got all of the ladies from the stable on the card, but it shows that there can be, like, when you isolate them, there is something there that can be exploited, because then you would have that both their singles matches are lost, but when they're a pack, they're strong. And I think that heightens that pack mentality. Not to really like big them up that much, or put that pressure on them. But that's what WWE did really well with the Shield. They created them that when they're together, they can't be beaten. You might be able to pick them off one by one, but together they are unbeatable. And I think that would be a really wise thing to do. Speaking of matches they could add, I think we're going to get RKJ versus Azoya based on the interaction we had. We've already had RKJ mention that he is challenging Gabe Kidd when he comes back to UK, but it seemed a bit vague. I think we get that at the Copper Box, and I think we get this match here, and really interesting because Azoya is the man who has been on the tear and beating everyone. He's got wins over both of the guys who are, as of now, headlining Copper Box. But no one in RevPro can say that. And I feel that RKJ needs that shot in the arm booking-wise, that just there hasn't felt like a concrete direction for him so far this year, certainly from me watching it. I think a win over Zoya could really help kind of kickstart the second half of the year for him.
Yeah, I agree. I feel like Ricky's in a little bit of the position that JJ Gow was in last year, where we know JJ Gow and Zack Sabre Jr. is on the cards. It's just, when's it going to happen? And until it happens, we're kind of just, I don't want to say plodding along because that sounds really negative, but we are just kind of building towards this match.
Yeah.
It feels like that with Ricky and Gabe. It feels like it's the match that they're going to do. We're just waiting for it to be confirmed. It's one where personally I feel like with the Copper Box, I think we're 8 weeks away. We're 5 shows away. I'm sure the planning is that they want to incorporate as many of the matches into the build-up shows and have people call people out, and then the graphics drop. But I feel like there must be some matches on that card where some graphics could drop now, and we don't need and it'd be okay that we see the graphic before they talk about it at the show.
Yeah.
There must be some people that are not going to be in Coventry, that are not going to be in Southampton, that are going to be on the Copper Box. And I feel like we need that excitement. But on the other hand, I'm not a wrestling promoter, and I do not know how to get bums on seats in a wrestling venue. That is not my job. And Andy Quilden's been doing it for 12 years, and he's been doing it to a really high standard for 12 years.
He's done all right, hasn't he? Yeah, he's done fine with it.
Pretty good. So there's no criticism there at all. It's probably more just out of me being excited. I want to have that extra excitement to know what I'm looking forward to now. It's interesting what you talked about with the idea of the women in the stable being vulnerable when they're in singles. Would you have Lizzie Evo lose to Kanji in Sheffield, or would you have Lizzie win that?
I don't know. Maybe what I would do there is I might do a bit, like you said, you don't do the kind of cheap finishes very often. So if we're not going with a cheap finish on Saturday, maybe I do something there where if Lizzie wins, it's not entirely clean. Or maybe she's the outlier because she has this kind of innate, almost like a crazy kind of attitude to her. Like she feel like, look, if any Scouser just starts shouting at you the way Lizzie Evo does, like they have got that real brashness to the accent that just comes across. Yeah. Like I have a Scottish family, and when people from Scotland start speaking to you in a strong accent, people think they are angry and they've just got this extra power. And I think Lizzie has this way of drawing people in and making them hate her really well. I will be the first person to admit that I legitimately disliked Lizzie Evo, right, for the longest time. Not character, legitimately, because I was at a 1PW show last year and Lizzie sold an injury that well. I was front row, middle, and it was a gauntlet, and they got the medical team there, but she was selling it so well, legitimately thought that she'd like completely screwed her leg up. Like, the girl was crying and everything. Like, it was uncomfortable and took me out of the match entirely because everyone around us thought she was legitimately hurt. And when I was at Progress a couple of weeks ago, I actually said to her, I could not stand you for the longest time because I felt, to me, it almost kind of was like you're trying to take me out of the match too much. And then I realised, no, she's a wrestler. She's doing her job. Like, that is exactly what she should have been doing. I just felt so much like I don't want to see this person really hurt. And so it got me, and it got me longer than I'd like it to. But she actually said to me, she's like, I worked myself. I got worked completely. And when I told her that story, she went, thank you. That is such a great compliment. And I was like, fair play to you. So yeah, I think maybe she's the one, her or Sapphire are probably the ones where you want to keep them that bit stronger. Maybe if they're going to lose, have it in such a way that's just a bit more like, I don't know, something a bit different, but it's going to be a good card. Now, we're looking at time, Dave. We're almost at the end of the show. I know you've got places you need to be. What I would like to do beforehand is just run through...
I've got places I need to be. Should we peel back the curtain slightly? We're recording this on Tuesday night, and England versus England. Is it Slovenia we're playing?
I don't care who England are playing, David.
You don't care because you're Scottish. Your team's out, mate. Yes, I'm going to
sigh.
England very shortly, but not before. I very much like the idea of us getting to answer some fan questions each week. It's something that I think is a great addition to the show. So yeah, what have you got for us this week, mate?
Yeah, cool. So we put this out there and thought, let's see if anyone actually replies, and thinking no one's going to reply to this. And we've got 5 questions here, or 4 questions in the statement. So what we're going to do, first of all, we are going to start with Esk Weston, who is at WestonEsk on Twitter. I believe you met at the show on Sunday, Dave, and said, with people like Mills, Jacobs, Gale, Slater, and RKJ all under the age of 25, just how good do you think this group of young wrestlers are, and what can they bring to the future of RevPro?
I mean, if I'm being honest, I think it is the most talented crop of wrestlers that I can see that has ever been in Britain at the same time. And I include the class of NXT UK when that first started. Because I think when you look at that NXT UK, and again, I'll keep saying it, because I know it is criticism that people can send my way very fairly. I wasn't watching shows when NXT UK came around. I was watching WWE and I was watching NXT UK. I wasn't aware of the shows that these guys were coming from.
Yeah.
But the guys that got collected up with it, there was lots of like great individual talents, but I don't know how much of the next like level down talent that there was, and maybe that's just my ignorance. And I'd love to be educated on it. I'd love to learn more. So like, do get in touch and tell us that. But in terms of like right now, you've got, if you look at it as like Michael Oku, it seems crazy to say, but it's like the oldest of the group, right, at 30.
Yep.
So if you look at Oku and you think Oku is ready now to go and do the next step, like he's ready to go, and like if he was booked, AEW are coming to the UK the month after next for both Dynamite and Collision, and then All In. If he was booked in that there, or if he was booked on a Rampage or a Collision or a Dynamite like Alex Windsor has, nobody would bat an eyelid at it because it's fully deserved and he's got there. But he's done that in like the last 6 or 7 years of wrestling, and I feel like he's like, so if you say he's won, and then Alex Windsor's won, and then you've got like your Danny Luna over in TNA, you've got Leon over in TNA, you've got Callum Newman who's gone out to New Japan, you've got Dan Maloney that's gone out to New Japan, Gabe Kidd who's come from being a RevPro contender to being, a champion in New Japan. You've got all of these guys who have already done it, so we can include them in this current crop of like wrestlers like 31 and under, so we can include Oku. You've then got all the guys that S. Weston's just named there. And then you can even see the next level. You can then see, okay, so where's Suzuya going to be? Where's Cameron Kai going to be? Where's Sapphire Reed going to be? You then look at all the women that have come into RevPro recently and all the other women out there. There's this incredible sea of talent, and I feel like I'm copping out slightly with my answer, but I don't feel like there's a ceiling to this. Like I really, really don't. Like there is no limit as to how many of these people could go on to have like stellar careers around the world. I think it might not always be the fairest. It might not be that the person with the most talent gets to go the furthest, or that the person who's worked the hardest gets to go the furthest. I feel like it's a combination of talent, hard work, luck, being in the right place at the right time, making the right connections, all of those things.
Absolutely. And you know what? We've got a great group of talent coming through. All those names you mentioned there, one that I'd like to throw out there who I really hope comes in as part of this 5-woman team is Millie McKenzie. I think has been one of my favorites for so long, and someone who is on a lot of shows that I go to or watch. So like I take it really seriously when I can see a Millie McKenzie match. I think she is phenomenal. And she's only, I just looked it up as you were talking there, she's 24. The other name I want to throw out there as well, I think is probably around the Oku kind of age, is Man Like DeReese. The guy has a way of connecting with people, and loudest pop I've heard in like just a normal arena was when he and Leon Slater lifted the 1PW tag team titles against like teams like Subculture, and it was the Rascals and people like that, and they're the ones that win it, and bam, like the guy has the most insane charisma out there. I was lucky again to see him over the Progress weekend, and he was the guy that he didn't get to the final, but probably made the biggest impression over the weekend, bar Luke Jacobs, who won it. And Luke Jacobs making like that, who'd have thunk it, eh? But yeah, you've got all these guys who you can kind of rotate in as well. You mentioned about the AEW shows. Yeah, I think you're right. Any of those guys being on those cards could step in and wouldn't look out of place. Tate Mayfair's recently did the same. He come along, hung. But AEW, as Tony Khan said, is for the sickos. And he saw the sickest match, which, guys, go and check out last week's episode. Cheap plug. Tony Khan is going to book Will Ospreay versus Michael Oku Collision international title match. That is what I'm calling just before All In. I think he's going to put that out there, and that would be incredible, I think. But yeah, these guys, so good. I keep saying that I don't want people to find out how good Michael Oku is. I don't want them to find out how good Sapphire readers and all of that, because selfishly I want to keep them in the 1865 for myself and get to see them each time. But what I want is I want to see our scene thrive. I want to see these guys who, like you've just said, they are probably one of the most well-rounded groups of talent in a long, long time, and I just want to see them all thrive out there. So thank you, Esk Weston, for that question. The next one that I'm going to ask is Wrestling X Coffee, friend of the show, friend of Dave, who loves our merchandise when he can get away from his wife. And he asks the question, we want to know how you guys take your coffee, the hard-hitting question some are afraid to ask. Now, I know when this came up, I could sense the fear in Dave's tweet. I'm going to start. How do I take my coffee? I don't. I'm sorry. I'm not a coffee fan. I do not drink coffee whatsoever. I'm Scottish. You'll always see me with a bottle of Iron Brew. When it comes to coffee, I like it in cakes. I just don't drink it. On the one occasion that I do, the one occasion is a caramel macchiato from Starbucks, and I asked them to put a lot of syrup in it. So that tells you what you need to know about me.
Mate, I'm shocked and appalled. I'm sorry, fans. I don't know if there's going to be an episode 3. I don't know if I can work in these conditions. How do I take my coffee is such a complicated question because it depends on so many factors. So I'll tell you my ideal day. My ideal day starts with an espresso. About 45 minutes after that espresso comes a cappuccino. And then going into the later morning, that's when we might get sort of like a latte, and then if it's a hot day, maybe like an iced latte in the afternoon. If it's a day where I need to be really on it, doing lots, thinking lots of espressos, I need that caffeine, gets the brain going. But yeah, it's a real complex question.
Cool. Okay, so the next question we have, continuing with this theme, Dave, of coffee and things that we'd like to take in. Imposter's Needle asks us the most contentious issue in pro wrestling today. Cadbury's is mid, yay or nay? And he said, for the record, I'm ride or die for Lint 85%. So, guys, I think I need to put out a slight apology / correction to one David Francisco. He posted this and Dave took issue with what I had to say. And I watched a little bit of his stream last night that he put out there and very kindly dubbed me Cromulent George rather than Cromulent David Francisco. But you won't hear me say this very often. David Francisco made a good point. In my haste of jumping to the defense of Milka chocolate being my favorite chocolate, if I had to pick for any bars, because I was thinking of bars, I completely forgot about Lindt chocolate. And as someone who has accidentally once spent £37 at Lindt chocolate pick and mix at Gunwharf Keys and being too embarrassed because I didn't realise that I spent that much and just paid for it, yes, I can agree that Lindt chocolate is the best. So, David Francisco, you are right.
You paid 37 quid.
Yeah, it was in the lead up to Christmas, and it was like the little Lindt balls, if you know the sort of ones you get in the boxes that are like £6. And I was like, oh, I like this. I'm going to try a few of these, and ended up coming to about £37. But what I decided was, as it was close to Christmas, I was going to give some to my friends and family as Christmas gifts as well, other than just the ones I wanted to eat. That's how I justified it. And also, yeah, wrestlers, I'm just going to say this now. If you see me at your merch tables and I ask you how much something is, I'm going to be that guy that even if I'm not keen for the price, I'm going to go, okay, take my money, because I am too worried about offending someone or upsetting someone. So there you go, guys. You see me come to your merch table, up it by 20 quid and you'll get an extra 20 quid out of me. That is just who I am, David. But what was your take on that? Cadbury's mid, yay or nay?
Mate, I'm not a big chocolate guy, if I'm honest. Like, I mean, those of you that have met me, and I mean, you're looking at me right now, you can see I'm not exactly slight of frame. But I'm more sort of sweets and ice cream and cakes and desserts and just big portions. They're my vices as opposed to chocolate. But I very much like a Cadbury's fruit and nut.
Now
I would say
that is my go-to. See, peace has been restored here because I was judging Dave there for not liking chocolate or not being a chocolate fan. I mean, all of those things that Dave mentioned, I'm the same. Love them all. Give or take Haribo's and that sort of thing. Like I can leave those till the cow come home. But
me too.
fruit and nut, when it comes to Cadbury's, yeah.
I think of all like the packets of sweets you can buy, Haribo are the worst ones.
Yeah, absolutely. Not for me at all. But thank you, Imposter's Needle, for that question. I now want some more lint. We're on to the final two, so I'm just going to read a statement out from Adam at Hokandori. Hope I've got that right. I was thinking about Michael Oku's British heavyweight title reign and the places he's defended it and the people he's beaten. I think when all is said and done, this reign needs to be talked about in the way that people talk about Okada's 16 to 18 reign, Kabashi in 03 and 05, and Joe's ROH title run of 03 04. Now, I'm not the biggest New Japan fan in the world in keeping up with continuity. Know of that Okada reign and know just how important that is. The other side of Japan, Kabashi, again, know the reverence. The Joe run, I'm very familiar with and understand what that meant at the time. And for me, I think it's just one of those incredible runs. And I keep saying where I think this is going to go, which I'll save for our preview show for the Copper Box. But I genuinely think that no matter when it happens, RevPro is going to feel so different without Michael Oku having that belt.
Yeah, I completely agree. In terms of like comparing it across companies, I think that's really, really difficult because like for RevPro, like we're there, we're feeling it, and we haven't had that advantage with those companies, and it's different times, and they're different audiences, different sized audiences, different scales. I think in terms of the history of that title, the Undisputed British Heavyweight Championship, I've said it before, no one's going to have the longevity that Ospreay had unless either we go through something horrific like a pandemic again, or Andy Quildan books someone to have a really long reign purely to beat the Ospreay reign, which I just can't see him doing because that doesn't sound like good booking. So no one's going to have that because Ospreay held it all through 2020 and 2021 when they had no fans and they had no shows for times of it. But Oku has the most defenses. He has the biggest audiences defended in front of. You know, he defended last week in Arena Mexico in front of like over 10,000 people. Like, that's incredible.
Yeah, crazy.
He's wrestled it. He's defended it all over the world. I feel like he's taken that belt to another level. And one of the reasons why I feel like it's another level is because when Ospreay had it in New Japan, it was Chase Owens walks around, or he used to walk around New Japan holding, was it the Texas Heavyweight Championship? I think it was. And it's like, it's an independent belt that he has, but it doesn't change who he is in New Japan. And Ospreay walking around with the RevPro belt and Kevin Kelly constantly plugging what was RPW on demand at the time. Like that was, it was all great business for RevPro, and it was great at getting eyes on it. And it's literally what drew me to RevPro. Like, I'm
okay,
yeah. Slightest. But Ospreay at the time was sort of like, he'd left RevPro and was a New Japan wrestler who still was working regularly for RevPro.
Yeah.
But he wasn't part of the fabric of it anymore. He was somebody who was coming in for the all call shows. He might do the odd 229. He might do an angle somewhere to build something. But like Oku is on every single card. He is everywhere. He's on every merch stand. He is the face of Revolution Pro Wrestling. Him and Amira are like the king and queen of the company. So the belt is associated with him. He's associated with the company. And then the belt is associated with all the people that he's wrestled, whether that's Titan, whether that's Ultimo Guerrero, whether that's Gabe Kidd and Luke Jacobs and Trent Seven and Zach Gibson and Will Ospreay and Anthony Ogogo, like all these names, you know, it's and to think like if they wanted to, they could have had his reign be even bigger because he had some non-title matches in there as well. He had a non-title match against Robbie X in the 229.
Yeah.
He had a non-title match with Yoshiaka in Sheffield. Both of those could have been for the title if they wanted to just, stat pack. But yeah, I think whatever we're comparing it to, we can definitely say it's something which is in conversations for greatest title reigns of a company that this company's ever held.
Yeah, wonderful. Thank you, Adam Hokandori, for that question or that statement. Yeah, love that. Please keep these coming, guys. And the last one I've got here is Best of the Brit Rest Indies at Best of Brit Rest. Can we get some predictions and things that you're most excited for? So before I ask you, Dave, for a very quick off the cuff, what is something you're excited for in a prediction? Dave and I have been speaking, guys, and we love this question and talk about what do we want to do. We're actually going to put something in the diary later so we can talk about some predictions and just some speculation pieces, because it's something I really enjoy, something Dave really enjoys. So we want to do something a bit more long form on this, maybe, and a bit more specialized to this. But Dave, what is something you're looking forward to and something that you're predicting in RevPro?
Destination everywhere. I'm looking forward to seeing where this goes, how it goes, how it ends, everything about it. In terms of predictions, I'll keep it brief because we're going to go longer form in a few weeks. But I do feel like we're going to get Oku and Mills versus Luke Jacobs and Ethan Allen.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like that is going to either be at the 229 in Coventry or in Southampton, one of those 3 shows. But between now and the Copper Box, that feels like it has to happen. I wonder if we will then also get a 6-man with Zuzaya joining Mills and Oku, and Ridgway joining Ethan Allen and Luke Jacobs. I don't know whether they'll do both because of the amount of time that's left. I hope they do. I hope we get sort of especially when you think Coventry audience and Southampton audience probably isn't going to have a lot of crossover. And also, they're 2 very different matches. But yeah. I feel like that's something that's coming, and it's something I'm very excited for.
Excellent. That's really good ones there, Dave. I will not speak too much on what you've just said there you think will be coming, because I also think the same, but in very different circumstances to you. So interested to see what we think will happen over time. For me, what am I really looking forward to? I mean, I'm looking forward to everything. That's such a cop-out. Really looking forward to the Copper Box show. But for me, the thing I'm looking forward to most over the next couple of months is going to be Steph Vercaer versus Danny Luna. I think that match is going to be just phenomenal. Steph Vercaer had 2 really good matches at Fantastica Mania. She's going to have a match with Mercedes coming up at Forbidden Door. And I think even though she's been around a while now, people still are going to be blown away by her because we've seen her for the first time. So I think that is going to be a match where these 2 have great chemistry. If at that point Steph doesn't have the New Japan Strong Women's title as well, and it is just for the RevPro Women's title, and we're at that stage now where you could start to argue, does Danny keep the title much longer? It, again, is not an affair where you could say this is really easy to call. So looking forward to that. A prediction that I think is going to happen in RevPro, I think Destination Everywhere Tag League. That's how I'll leave it for now. So there we go. Another episode done. Thank you so much, Dave, for this time. We said when we first started this, we're going to try and keep these to an hour. And I feel like even despite our best efforts to try and edit ourselves, here we are I think at this point, just over, somewhere around the hour and a half mark. So and loving it. There's so much more I could have said on these shows, which is crazy to think. But Dave, thank you as always for your time. Be really gracious with that. Dave, where can the people find you online?
DaveTheMark.com is the easiest place. Everything stems from there. And then Dave the Mark is the X, and TikTok and Instagram is Dave.the.mark.
Fabulous. And guys, you can find myself on all of the main platforms. I think on Twitter, I'm not calling it X, unlike some people here. Cromulent Fellow. I'm at Cromulent Rest as well for the main channel, and you'll find Cromulent Wrestling for both Instagram and YouTube. So please just jump on all these things if you can. Give us some subscribes, some shares, anything would be much appreciated. Please keep some questions coming in, keep interacting with the posts. Let us know what you're thinking. And yeah, until next time, we are out of here.